Welcome back to the Unbiased Opinion, where everyone's opinion is biased except ours. I'm Colin,
Daniel.
and we don't have that other guy, Craig, with us this week. We hinted when we talked about Nosferatu 2024 at the very end that we talked about the Wolfman, but then that was a big lie because then Craig and I ended up doing the Transformers the movie review. So now we're going to finally be talking about the Wolfman from 2010 because there's a new one just called Wolfman that's going to be coming out this week as of this recording, and I think by the time this is out, the new one would have come out already. So, with all that being said, since we're talking about the Wolfman 2010, and we already talked about the Wolfman, the original one from 1941. I wasn't in that episode, but Daniel and Craig talked about it. And I know, Daniel,
Well,
you'd mentioned multiple times that you liked this one. So,
hmm
why don't you
yeah.
just start off? What did you like about the Wolfman 2010?
Well, I would say this is probably one of my favorite werewolf movies, if not my
Oh.
favorite. Maybe a hot take, but I the main thing that I love about this one is the design of the Wolfman, and they essentially upgraded him. And I think in terms of you could talk about what it did and didn't get right. They definitely got his look right. They got the costume. I thought like for him was great, and I like that they made him vicious. Like he was actually intimidating. And I remember like the first time watching it, and to see him go on all fours, I liked. So that is why this one holds such a special place in my heart is because I remember when I first saw it and like I loved the look that they gave him because I think they did a great job of paying enough respect to the old one, to his classic look, where you could tell it's definitely a modern renovation of it,
Hmm.
but it still is, it's not completely unique, but it's its own look in a way. But I still think that they did a great job with the makeup, and this movie won an Academy Award for it. The CGI, there could be a lot left to desired there, but in terms of the look, how they got the werewolves right in this. So that was like when I first saw this, like younger especially, and like I don't look into movies as much. I was like, oh, this is fantastic. And
Well, let me just
then
stop you right there for our audience. We're going to be talking about the extended edition of the movie because the
yes,
theatrical is 103 minutes, I believe, and the extended edition is 159 minutes. I've only seen the. This is my first time watching it. I've only seen the extended edition, so I couldn't even tell you what was in or what was not in the original theatrical cut. I do know I saw a quick thing that said Max von Sydow. He was in the extended cut, not the theatrical, because he's the one that gives whatever his name is, Larry, the cane in the beginning of the movie, or
Lawrence, yeah,
Lawrence or
which
whatever.
is a little, which I like that they added that scene, and I liked because it's a nice little, it's a simple little nod to the original one.
Right.
And I also like that it wasn't that they added that in there, but I know it was just literally in there just to pay a little tribute to the original, but I also kind of like that they didn't use it like in the original one. That he
Well,
just kind of
he
had it
didn't
as a
beat a
walking
wolf
stick.
to death with it.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you what
well,
I think about the movie because I
uh,
know you love
well,
it.
uh, what I was gonna say is I know it has its flaws. I'm not gonna sit here and say that it's a perfect film. It has its flaws, especially the mix, like the weird mixture of CGI to then makeup, and like a lot of the CGI isn't. It didn't seem like fully rendered properly. But I know that there's also so behind this movie that there was production issues. I think the original guy left. The original director left the movie, so they had to get someone on, and I think you can see there's a little sometimes clashing in the movie. But I also like that. I know that the story is very simple. The twist, I didn't mind the twist.
Oh,
I
I
thought
thought
it
it
was
was
fine.
silly. Well, before you continue, because I haven't even got to say what I thought about the
Okay,
movie.
all right.
I thought it was okay, and just seeing the original, I thought the original was okay too. Because I know you said that this one's more violent, and that shouldn't be a slight towards the original because it was in during the Code
Oh
era.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
They
yeah,
show off screen him beating the wolf to death, which was Bela Lugosi. I didn't know. I was like, oh, that's him, and then he turns into a wolf and he gets beaten to death.
yeah.
But yeah, the visual effects leave a lot to be desired, especially the twist. Because I okay, so I had no idea what to expect. I think through osmosis and through watching YouTube clips, I was like, doesn't Anthony Hopkins become a werewolf at the end? Like, I could have sworn that happened
Uh,
because it was like on movie clips or something I saw
yeah.
years ago, and I was like, oh boy, this is. It got like really schlocky at the end, and I think for this movie too, it's not particularly scary at all. Even though it
No.
tries to, it's considered a horror movie. It's
Yeah.
more like a thriller. I wouldn't even
Yeah.
say, but it has that gothic look to it. Like,
And that's one of the main things
it's
I liked
clearly
about it.
based off like the atmosphere of your Frankenstein, and
That Victorian era
yeah,
of
because it takes
gothic
place
horror.
in the 1891. It says, and the original movie was
Yeah.
modern times, or modern times meaning that 1941 is when it came out.
Mhm. And yeah, but I see. I like that it was like a straight horror. I don't need it to be scary. To me, I like this more of a style of a werewolf movie where it's kind of a little bit more action based and stuff like that. So the twist at the end, yeah, I didn't love it. I didn't mind it. I mean, looking back, it was a little silly. It wasn't the worst thing
Why did
for
he
it.
kill his son again to get Larry back?
Well, it was I think it was the brother Ben.
Well, he was leaving, and he just
He was
decided to
leaving, and
kill
he was
him.
going to take and no, and he was going to take his fiance, who the father had taken a liking to. Like she reminded him, I think, of the
Cool.
mother.
Yeah, yeah.
So he was upset about that, and then he got drunk one night, knocked out Singh, and then because he couldn't get locked away, he then went and killed the brother. So he didn't intentionally mean to kill the brother. It was, but more of like he was just upset.
Well,
And
he
then he couldn't get
intentionally
locked
meant
away.
to kill Singh later on.
Oh yeah,
Poor
yeah, yeah.
guy.
Yeah, he just descended quickly.
So when you
So
were a
like,
kid, hold on. When you were a kid,
yeah,
did you fully expect the twist? Because it was very obvious earlier on when he locked what's
I
his name? When he
don't.
locked Lawrence in the cage. His eyes were like brown when he walked back into the light, or he walked from the light
I
to the darkness. You could see his eyes. I'm like,
Yeah. Once I saw it, I was like, oh. Like, I remember as a kid, I was just like, oh. It wasn't like, oh.
no
I'm what.
way!
Yeah, I saw those clapping seals. I stood up and threw my popcorn on some unsuspecting
You just start
person.
pouring butter on yourself and threw the popcorn on you.
No, I remember I was just like, oh, okay. And then, but I remember as a kid, I was definitely more excited watching him trying to get back, knowing that there was going to be a werewolf fight at the end. The things I was expecting to happen happened. There wasn't any change up. Once you figured his dad, and he was like, I got to get back and kill him. I was excited to watch the werewolf fight, though, as a kid. I'll admit that. I think with this movie, looking back, I can be realistic about it. It's on paper, it's an okay movie. I hold it in a higher regard because I think they got the look right. Like I said, it's my favorite werewolf design, and I think they nailed that part. Which for a monster movie, at least if they say they got that right, they at least you're at 50%. But for the other parts, like his dad being the werewolf and his dad being the real villain, I think they could have taken more from the original one, where they kind of play, because they mention
Well, there's not
Lawrence's
really a real villain in the original.
no,
It's just
and I think
the
and that
consequences of his
and
actions.
that and
That's
that's
the real
that's
villain.
where I think they should have maybe gone a little. They should have taken more of that direction, where it is a curse. And obviously, they're playing more on like the family's cursed and everything. Where in the original, the family wasn't cursed. It was just some guy. Well, he did go for an engaged woman, and then that's the repercussions of his actions. But he just more of got cursed. It wasn't really
Well, this
his
is
own
going to be
father.
a
I think.
slight tangent because spoilers to anyone who hasn't seen either ones. Lawrence dies in both of them, and
Mm.
I wonder how do they explain in the many sequels, like Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, or Wolfman Returns. How do they explain him coming back? Because he
All
dies
right.
at the end.
So for Wolfman, and then the next movie he's in, 1943, is Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, which is actually the first crossover of the monsters, which you could say is the forefather of monster crossovers, and essentially what far fetched. But so that one he was dead. It was a continuation of the first movie. So he was dead.
Resurrected?
So he's buried in his ancestral like tomb, like those old family like burial things. You
Yeah,
know, like in a
mausoleums or
cemetery.
whatever.
Yeah, yeah. And he was buried, and he was covered in wolfsbane. So these two burglars go to burgle the family tomb, and they open up his tomb, and they remove the wolfsbane, and lo and behold, it was under a full moon. So the full moon shines and resurrects him, and he transforms and kills both of them.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
okay. Because in this one, Lawrence's death is way more graphic. What's her name? Gwen shoots him with a revolver, like right in the chest.
yeah. There was
At the
actually
very
there was
end.
actually two endings filmed
Oh,
for it. I
really?
think.
Were
I
they
think
different
he
with theatrical or extended? Was
No,
this
so the
ending?
theatrical end, no, there was a deleted like ending. It was
Oh,
never. I think he ended up actually biting her and like killing her.
oh.
Yeah,
So let's talk about some creepy things. It's weird how they have a relationship, Lawrence and Gwen, even though Gwen was either the fiance, girlfriend, what have you, to his dead brother. I was like, ooh, it's a little off-putting, a little
yeah,
weird. I don't know why
yeah.
they could just had her be another, like no relation to Ben.
Like in the original one,
Well,
like
it's
where she
creepy in the
was.
original one too, where he's like looking through a telescope. And he's like, oh,
Well, that's creepy,
oh,
but at least she wasn't related. There was no like prior connection
yeah,
in
yeah.
that regard.
I know what you mean. Did you also know
Yeah,
that Hugo Weaving's character,
yeah.
Inspector Francis Aberline, apparently is based off of Frederick Aberline, who was a British chief inspector, and he's known for being in the investigation of Jack the Ripper like the murders
Oh,
in the
and that's where they said that
1880s.
line in the movie.
Oh, that flew over my head. I wasn't really like I was probably half paying attention, but
Oh yeah.
when he said when I looked on the Wikipedia, it has the list and it just says loosely based. I'm like, huh, that's an odd thing to include.
I do want to ask you, what did you
Yes.
think the design for this Wolfman? Because I know you said you liked the aesthetic for the Dracula and the Bram Stokers. What did you think of this
Yeah, I
Wolfman's
thought it
like
was
look
fine.
and stuff?
I remember I looked it up because this was supposed to be our episode last week, and then you couldn't do it, so that's why I did Transformers. So I watched this
Mhm.
last week, and that's why I did my Wikipedia search. And it said that Benicio del Toro, who was a producer of this film, was really adamant about sticking to the original design. So I think it's fine, you know, as long as it doesn't look like a dude running around with like a really hairy dude, because that's essentially what the original looked like. Some guy who had some
Yeah.
horrible hair condition.
Oh, did you see what the new one's coming out? Like, what the peaks of
Well,
that design?
yeah, we'll get to that, but like usually
See,
when
I thought,
someone says a
yeah,
werewolf, I think of like Skyrim. You know,
yeah,
he has like a
yeah.
wolf's face, and it still has the
See,
weird disproportional body, but it's like a wolf face. And I appreciate that this doesn't look like the Silver Bullet werewolf, where
oh,
it's essentially
like the
like a
bear.
bear. Yeah. Or even like the American Werewolf at London, where it just looks like some kind of like physical wolf, you know. But
Yeah,
this is
almost
like
looked like
it's a good mix, I think. It doesn't.
yeah.
I think
It's
Skyrim is probably what comes in mind when I think of werewolf.
yeah, yeah, not Twilight.
I'd never seen Twilight actually.
Look it up right now. They're giant wolves. I mean, like they're
I'd rather not.
like 6 foot tall wolves. But I was always more accustomed to this because this is what I was like introduced to growing up. So I always loved these movies. So I always liked that look. And then watching different ones where I think this is like the best look where he's the perfect blend. Where he stands upright, but he stands on like the hind legs. He can run on all fours, but he looks like a wolf man. But he's not like some crazy lunatic and just with a little bit of extra hair. That's why I always really like this look, and I do like the Skyrim one. I do like that one too. But some of the werewolf designs, I always think over the years, I'm like, some of them just look very generic wolf looking, and I'm like, eh. I also can admit my bias to this one. I think with this movie overall, when I look back, I think they had the right elements, and I think the story could have cut out a, some things. They had the right potential, but the execution didn't necessarily hit. I think if the werewolf part isn't as good as it is, this movie really would be highly disappointing for me.
Yeah, because I think the movie itself, like we said, it has the gothic look and feel. It's
I
just
and I like that tone and the feel that they set with it. I thought that was great,
it
but
just gets schlocky at the wrong time because
yeah,
I think the ending really like kind of killed it. Like it was really silly. And yeah, as a kid it's cool, but when you're watching it, you're like, as an adult,
yeah,
you're like, what? Now they're
yeah. I think
fighting as werewolves, and he slashes his
yeah,
head off.
yeah, and I don't know if they needed to go into like the childhood trauma kind of a thing because in the original one it was like the brother died and that's what he comes back for. So that is true. But there was always the father in the original one said like, we've always had a strained relationship. It was kind of like it was just there. There wasn't an explanation. Possibly witnessing his mother kill herself, then finding out your dad was the one that killed her, and it's like I think they could have simplified it a little bit better and cut out some of those elements and change Gwen's relationship to the family. Yeah, so there are certain parts like it has the right tone. I like the setting. Obviously, they changed it from the original one, which the original one it was in Wales. This one's in England, and I think at times too, I think they made Anthony Hopkins' character a little too stand up, like a little weird and distant, a little too much. Like they're really trying to drive home him and his dad don't get along. They're really trying to drive home something's off about the dad. I think it would have been a better twist if the dad is kind of like all holly jolly or like nicer towards Lawrence, and then all of a sudden it turns out he's a werewolf and he's the one that killed everyone. See, that would have been a better twist, I feel like, as opposed to really driving it on the nail. Oh, he's distant and stuff, and he acts weird and just looks at people, and he's distant.
That
He
could just
killed the
be Anthony
mom.
Hopkins, you know?
Yeah, I
He was great,
think.
by the way. He's great in everything he does. I love Anthony Hopkins.
Do you think they could have maybe pulled back on the dad being so distant, where it was like
Uh,
maybe
I mean, I really don't know. It just, I don't mind him being distant because they have that odd relationship. But again, it really just comes down to the silly ending.
so it's the ending that
They've,
just
yeah, they
so
just,
so,
it
so
turns into full schlock. Because I guess you could say throughout the movie it's tense, quote unquote. Or I mean, I thought the very first scene when the wolf attacks, I thought that was really well done. Just it was very graphic, like people's arms are getting cut off. Some
oh,
guy's
in the
back
gypsy
was
camp.
ripped up. Yeah, the gypsy camp.
Oh,
Someone's
that was
back
great.
is ripped up.
Yeah,
I
with the
don't know
bad
why
CGI
Lawrence
bear.
would ever go after that wolf with a gun. I don't know. I know there's a kid running away, but like I'd be like, I didn't see any kid run out there. I'm going home. That's me. I wouldn't go
Yeah,
after. I wouldn't run after that monster with a weapon after seeing it mow down a whole camp of people.
the bad CGI bear.
Yeah, don't
No,
they shoot the bear or something?
no, nothing ever happened
Oh,
to the bear.
oh. I
Because
remember seeing the bear.
originally, so that bear is another nod to the original one. So originally, I think there was a deleted scene from the original one where either as Larry, I think as the Wolfman or as Larry, like the Gypsy Camp had there was a deleted scene I think where there was a dancing bear, and I think either as the Wolfman or as just Larry wrestled with the bear. So that was another nod to the original,
As
but and there
Larry,
were
he wrestled a
I think
bear.
I think it might have been as the Wolfman he fought the
Oh,
bear, but I think the scene was ultimately scrapped. Just imagine
it
the
probably
main
looked terrible if it was a guy in a bear suit.
or or the main actor's killed. He's actually mauled on
Lon
set.
Chaney Jr.'s stunt double was just murdered by a bear.
But yeah, that gypsy, I did love that first scene in the gypsy camp. He's just like kind of going around the outside, like herding them like sheep.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was great. That was a fun scene.
And then I liked the one scene I wish they could have maybe expanded on a little bit more, given a little more screen time to, is the asylum. Not while he's in the asylum. I mean, like when he breaks out and he transforms in the
Oh,
chair.
when they have everybody in there, like
Yeah,
he's surrounded by all the people.
yeah. And then he transforms, and I did like that transformation scene. I know at times the CGI looked dated, and I feel like they probably could have done a little bit more. They could have done more practical effects there. I did like that scene where he breaks out. I remember, I remember as a kid watching it, and when he threw the doctor out the window.
Probably got a good chuckle out of you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
so,
'cause I'm just skimming
like,
through the movie. I think it would have been better if they just cut out all of the childhood trauma.
Yeah.
nonsense. 'Cause that didn't really serve any purpose to the story. Because his dad had him committed for a little bit.
Yeah, and another thing too that has like kind of bothered me for some time thinking about it is in the childhood flashback it shows he comes and finds his dad holding his mom, and it looks like she just slit herself. But then he has the revelation that he murdered her when he transformed. So wouldn't he have found his father as a werewolf there, or just found the mom just by herself completely mangled?
Ah, beats me.
That always bothered me because I'm like, wait, they paid off like he finds the dad holding the mom like he planted made it look like she killed herself,
Yeah.
and then it finds out that
The wolf.
like the dad was telling the story when he went hunting or something like that in like India, and he found that feral child in the cave and it bit him, and that's how he got the curse. And then he's like, "Oh, I thought it was a joke." And then he's like, when I got home, I found out otherwise." And then that's where Lawrence put it together, like, you killed my mom. And he goes, "Yeah, I suppose I did." So the one thing is, did Lawrence mind completely misremember? Like, it protected itself, like it made up it couldn't process what it was seeing, so it made it seem like his mom killed herself, or was it just the writing messed it up? Like it was just
Probably the writing.
continuity.
I was just about to say, I could have sworn. This is a sign that I'm losing it. I could have sworn Lawrence killed somebody by leaving them out in the middle of the forest and a bear mauls them. But then, while you were talking, I was thinking about it. I'm like, oh wait, that's from Craven. That didn't happen in the Wolfman. I was like, I kept on thinking, like, who died from a bear in the middle of the forest?
Is it because I mentioned the bear?
Yeah, I was just sitting there. I'm like, it feels like it came from that movie. I was like, no, he chopped his father's head off. Like it wasn't his dad he did that to. All right, sorry. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, but yeah, but I like that. I wish when he broke out of the asylum, that scene was a little bit longer. Like maybe showing him a little more, instead of him just on the run, maybe showing a little more carnage. And I think that would have been a bit. That scene should have been a little bit longer. But otherwise, I did like the chase scene, even though I still was like, how did the detective keep up with him for so long when he's on all fours running?
He's shooting so accurately too with his little pistol.
Yeah,
his little revolver.
Yeah, but also, like, how did he keep up with the? Well, I mean, actually, he really didn't keep up with him for that long because once he went to all fours and was jumping, I did like that scene where he was on the roof, so they switched to all fours and just moving around. And then, because there was a scene, a deleted scene. It had more scenes of him kind of committing carnage. Not Woody Harrelson, but Lawrence Talbot, just, so no one gets confused.
I don't think anyone would ever confuse that.
Woody Harrelson in a terrible wig. But there was one where he like jumped down, went to this big ballroom glass building he saw. It was like a costume party or something. The wolf walks in and there's like head and shoulders everyone, and there's this blind lady singing. And then he was like in a trance with the music, like with her singing, so he didn't harm anyone. And then some guy tugged on him because he was like walking from him, and he just like mauled like 5 people. And then like they shot him and then he ran out. I was like, I'm glad they cut this. This would have been a very conflicting and confusing scene. You're trying to weirdly humanize him, but then he mauls like 5 people. I feel like if they had just simplified it a little, like, or just cut down on the human stuff, I feel like this movie would have been much more highly regarded, or at least received better. But I know that's one of the big complaints is the underdeveloped characters and the plot.
I think if you go into this movie expecting some werewolf carnage and only that, I think you'll be satisfied.
Like me.
Yeah. I mean, I would go as far as to say that I didn't even think the original was that good. I don't know if that's blasphemous to say, but the wolf is barely in it. Like when you compare old movies, like how underwhelming they are, especially if you compare them now. And I know you can't compare movies then and now, but it's just like you look at King Kong, which came out before the Wolfman, and that was action packed for its time. Kong was in that movie a lot. There was a lot of spectacle, and in the Wolfman, he transforms twice and he barely does anything. And like the
Yeah.
original.
And you don't even, and in the original, you don't even see the full transformation of him or his face and stuff until at the end when he dies, and also when he gets trapped, it reverse transforms him.
Yeah.
Well, also, and fun fact, I don't know if you noticed this, Colin, but in the original one, did you notice that there's no reference of the full moon having any part of his transformation? They don't show it, at least.
Can't say I did.
Yeah. Yeah, because the Frankenstein meets the Wolfman is the first one to introduce or show. I shouldn't say no. The first one, no.
Show
It
it.
it, met, it mentioned a full. Well, it says the autumn moon, but the second one shows the full moon and then him transforming in Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. So, but
Oh.
yeah,
Can't
in
say
the
I
first
noticed
one,
that.
in the first one, they didn't show. There was no shots of the full moon.
Yeah, I can't say I noticed that. Again, I don't know what you and Craig said about the original Wolfman, but I didn't particularly like it. I know it has its place in history, but
Yeah,
I thought it was kind of
I think
underwhelming.
if I remember what Craig said, it was he enjoyed it for what it was. Obviously, movies of that time. Again, for me, it's just a special place because I grew up watching them and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
always like them. And again, it definitely if you went in thinking like it definitely is not as action packed. But that's why I love Frankenstein meets the Wolfman because that one is definitely more action packed, and then you have them, and then you have the classic fight at the
I
end,
don't even
which
want to say I was expecting action pack. I was expecting maybe more scenes of terror, and
yeah,
there really
which
wasn't any.
Yeah. Well, I mean, which was a big thing to even show him biting some guy in the throat. My favorite in those movies, it would say like he killed someone. They're like, oh, their jugular was ripped out. Like that was the horror. Was them describing it
Yeah,
as
yeah.
they're they can't even show it.
Show
Show it.
it. Well, like again, I guess it's unfair to criticize too much of the original Wolfman because it did come out almost 84 years ago. So,
Yeah.
but I like to
This one,
compare King
yeah,
Kong to a lot of those other movies because in terms of like action and spectacle, King Kong came before, and
yeah.
that again was action packed. It was fun, adventurous, even dare I say scary at times, especially for its time. I think
Yeah.
King Kong, the original one, is the benchmark of the old movies era of like action adventure and horror.
Yeah, I mean, because I guess also too with like the Wolfman, Frankenstein, stuff like that, and it's like the themes that they're going for is a little different, and what the story's about. But yeah, I can see what you're saying. But for this one, I think if they cut out the elements of childhood trauma, that part would be fine. I don't mind the mom necessarily the dad married a gypsy or whatever. I think you just like the mom maybe died of old age or she got sick. Like you don't need to have that whole backstory. Because I don't mind when he comes into town, and I guess the one thing I did like rewatching this is how they set up the different perspectives on like trying to deal with the werewolf. You have the inspector who is just going off pure logic and reason and deduction, and then you have the gypsies who are mystical, and then you have the town folk who are more religious. And so I did like that element, that clash where they like setting it up, and I like the soundtrack for it and everything. It's just the dad marrying a gypsy and then like maybe the town people now because Larry came back after a long time, that was fine, like them being weary of him and stuff, all that was fine. But I guess I also, like you said, where it's the two werewolves at the end can
Yeah,
completely
it
throw
became
you.
full schlock, and I guess some
Yeah,
people could like that. But in a movie that was kind of taking itself seriously, when it goes full schlock, it can derail
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Especially if like how do I describe this? If it was something along the lines of like you knew there were multiple werewolves running around or something, I guess I wouldn't mind it as much. But the fact that it was his dad that was
yeah.
the wolf that committed all those terrible crimes and murders, I don't know. I feel like in this case,
Like it would have been
his
better, almost
work.
like how the original one he killed off the werewolf, so you don't have that problem. Now it's just him.
He just beat it to death. Well, in the original one
Well,
too, it was like obviously some kind of dog creature. It wasn't even a humanoid
well, it was
werewolf.
no, it was a dog. It was an
Yeah,
actual dog, and
even
they never
though
explained it.
they
Yeah,
were saying earlier on, like he, because I just watched this like a half hour ago. He was like, "What is a werewolf?" And they say it's like a whatever anthropomorphic creature, like a hybrid. And then you just see this
Yeah.
dog that he beats to death with a cane.
Yeah. I think actually Lon Chaney Jr. that was his dog in real life that he got like
You just
because
beat to death. Was he Michael
he
Vick?
didn't actually beat it to
No,
death.
I'm
There's a
kidding.
difference. but well, but at least in the ending of the first one though, I did you like the ending of the first one, or it definitely see that has more of a shock value. I feel like with it, where it's the dad, they have a strained relationship. His dad's trying to like, he thinks he's crazy, he's trying to help him, and then his dad ends up killing him at the end. And then actually, and then it carried over into Frankenstein and Wolfman, where they said that his dad ended up, it died of a broken heart because he killed his own son. Like
That's
they're
more
like, oh, he,
tragic.
yeah, I think the original one does a better job. The Wolfman, like, kind of truly being more of a tragic. Not the Wolfman. Lawrence Talbot in all the movies, like, he's this tormented soul. It seems once he got cursed, and I thought Lon Chaney always had that look on his face throughout the movie, like he's just such a tormented soul. He just wants to like end it. But I think in this one, he's meant to be like this traumatic character, but it's I think in the
Well,
original one,
Benicio del Toro definitely looks through the makeup like he just doesn't. He hasn't gotten any sleep.
yeah.
He looks
Well, he does.
miserable.
He does have the look of it.
Yeah, it's just his face, I guess. What I was gonna say is I like the idea that the werewolf, the lycanthropy, whatever, is a curse, and it definitely feels more like a curse in the original than in this one. It feels more. Anthony Hopkins treats it as like some kind of sick privilege.
Well, see, and that's one thing too, where he's like, "Oh, just accept it," and it's like, but you have no control over it. See, it's not like a power you could master, and it's like this dude can transform whenever he wants, and now he's like immortal. It seems that there's no recollection of what they do.
Yeah, because in
You
this
know,
one he would wake up at some tree, like the tree stump, and he's just all covered in blood. Imagine waking up like that. It'd be
that's all.
horrifying.
Yeah, and so I think that's the thing too, that with the focus on the childhood trauma as opposed to him being cursed with this thing, it deviates a bit, and where oh you're just a child. Like, I don't think he needs to have childhood trauma. Like in the original one, they're just saying he might be insane. Like you're transforming into a wolf, you're just a lunatic. Like
Yeah, they're trying to use electric shock therapy on him.
yeah, they like drowned. They're like dunking him in ice water.
Oh yeah, the new one, but in the original, weren't they going to use electric shock therapy?
Yeah.
What kind of device is that in the new one? Oh my god, the the ice bath.
And they're just injecting him.
Looked like some kind of weird ride at like at a carnival, like at a boardwalk. Try the ice bath challenge. $5 to enter.
10 if you get hypothermia.
10 if you lose feelings in all extremities.
Yeah, so that's the thing. His dad, and I think that's another thing too in this movie that doesn't hit as well as they thought it would, is the dad essentially just accepting the beast after the mom died. He said he'd been dead inside and all this stuff, and he accepted it, the beast. And I'm like, but again, it's like you can't control it, and you don't have any. It's not like a power you can enjoy once you master it. There's
You have no recollection. You can't control anything. You don't know who you're killing. You just wake up in blood. Like, that is a curse by definition.
Yeah.
There's nothing fun about that.
And the whole thing is like Lawrence doesn't even focus on his. It almost is like they brush over Lawrence being cursed. That it's the real curse is his dad. Like I think that's the problem of maybe that this one did, is like they focused a little too much on the dad, and it takes away from Lawrence being cursed.
Well, I guess when you have Anthony Hopkins, you're obligated to...
It's weird that they had such a good cast for this movie, and it didn't do well at all. They had a powerhouse cast.
We forgot to mention really the cast, but I thought, given what they were given, I thought everyone did a great job. You know, Benicio del Toro is usually pretty good. Anthony Hopkins, Emily Blunt was good. You know, Hugo Weaving.
Yeah.
And then there's a bunch of other people, but... We had Rick Baker was the first guy to die in the movie. The guy who
I know.
famously did the design, the legendary Rick Baker. I don't know how many Academy Awards this man has. He has so many.
Yeah.
He has one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. My God. Good for him. He definitely is one of the greatest of all time when it comes to
Yeah.
best makeup.
And it was a pretty good kill. Just gets blindside tackled. But so let me ask you this: if they had changed the ending, and maybe a follow up question on, and if you could change the ending,
What would I
but
change it
if,
to?
well, so if but at face value, if they had changed the ending, would this movie have would it have really changed how you viewed this movie?
Just the ending and nothing else?
Yeah, like if they changed that twist, like where it
Probably,
didn't get schlocky.
not. Because I mean, if it changes so much if the ending is different, because then Anthony Hopkins wouldn't be a weirdo throughout the movie,
Yeah.
and he wouldn't lock him and he wouldn't visit him in prison and give him like a switchblade, or what was it, like a shaving kit? He's like, here, you can kill yourself with this when it gets too real for you or something.
Yeah.
I think it's just the movie not focusing enough on the werewolfism being some kind of curse, because I think I like that idea a lot, and I know that's how it
Yeah.
is normally treated.
Yeah.
Unlike Skyrim, you can control who you kill and feed on.
Well, see, if Anthony Hopkins had that lycanthropy, I see where his mind's at.
Yeah,
Especially you get the Ring of Her scene, then it's
yeah,
game over. But this, where it's like, no, it's you do it once a month. You have no recollection of who you're killing or what you're doing. Like that would be horrifying. Like you said, like with the Benicio, you wake up in shredded clothes and blood.
well, that's
And you're
where
just
a movie like A Werewolf at London really treats it well. The curse of it, because what was his name, David, right? Did he had no? I
yeah.
mean, I saw the movie years ago. He
Yeah,
had
he
no
woke up like
recollection of it,
he
and in
woke up
that
in like a
movie
wolf
too.
exhibit.
Yeah, in that movie too, he would see the dead people that he killed in his rampages. You know how horrible that would be?
Yeah,
He'd see like his friend, and every time he'd see his friend, he'd be more and more decrepit and disgusting.
yeah,
So he was like essentially like some animatronic skeleton talking. But I like those ideas where it really shows how horrible it is to be cursed with a werewolf, like being a werewolf. Because that movie, I never really got that feeling from this movie. They definitely wanted more, like they definitely wanted to build to the point of the schlocky fight at the end. And I
yeah,
thought some of the scenes were great, like when they had him all chained up with all those doctors around, he broke out. I thought that was fun, and obviously we talked about earlier the first encounter scene at the gypsy camp. I thought that was well done.
yeah. I did like when Lawrence first transformed. All those guys are out in the woods trying to lead, that they thought they captured him and
Yeah,
stuff. Again, all of Lawrence as a werewolf is great, and that's what is the saving grace of this movie. But it's weird to say that a werewolf movie really lacked, like you said, if you're just going for werewolf action and
werewolf
you
on
know,
werewolf action.
yeah, and and I thought with this movie it was the right amount of gore. It wasn't gore porn, but it was enough to show that he's vicious without being like gratuitous for the sake of it.
He's not ripping. It's not like a Terrifier or Terrifier 2,
Yeah,
if anyone's ever
yeah,
seen those
yeah,
infamous movies.
yeah. But it gets the job. It gets the job done. Because I think my favorite, or not maybe not my favorite scene, but I like the one part that made. I remember being in the theater and the part at the end. Remember in the first when he first transforms and they all disperse and he tracks the one guy down. The guy runs into the mud and the
Oh, the
guy
poor
shoots him
guy.
one last time and he goes to shoot himself and there's no and
Oh
you see his
yeah,
eyes.
that
I
poor
remember I
guy.
remember I remember in the theater everyone just going, "Ooh." But he got a quick kill
Ouch.
though. Yeah, he just one swing took his head off. But well, I can only imagine if like Zack Snyder and the people who did Nosferatu had this movie.
Well, if Robert Eggers did this, there'd be a bunch of naked people. I think the werewolf himself would be naked, and you'd see the werewolf dong, the wong, if you will.
I can only imagine what he would have written for the scene when she shoots him at the end, especially because of the position that they were in.
Yeah. Some good old necrophilia in front of everybody.
Oh my god. But yeah, so that's the frustrating thing with this movie is I feel like it's a pendulum swing where it's like the main thing that you come for they got right, which they at least hit that. They got the werewolf, they got the look down, they got the werewolf scenes right, but the rest it's like I think with this movie you could say there's a lot left to be desired. Again, I feel like they had the tone right. I
They
like
had the look right. The music
yeah,
was
the
good.
soundtrack right. They had the cast right. It was all there, the pieces to be a great movie, but
The script.
they
The script. The script. That's the downfall of many movies, unfortunately, is always the script.
I can sit here and say I really enjoy this movie because it gets the one thing I love right. And so, and like I said, this is my favorite werewolf design. So, again, I'm willing to look past, especially that schlock at the end. For someone like you, it bugs you more. Where I can look past it because one, I'm super biased with these movies and the Universal movies. I can admit that. And two, they nailed the Wolfman. Not like how the Nosferatu guy would, but they got this one right.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
I think my issue with the schlocky ending was not that it was schlocky. Again, it was just
it conflicted the tone of the movie.
It just felt weird because then everything was serious and it just turns into this like, what's that one movie where there's like this terrible CGI fight? Was it like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? It felt like something straight out of that. And if anyone's seen that movie, they might know what I'm talking about.
Are you talking? Oh wait, are you talking about?
This guy
I've seen that
turns
movie.
into like a Hulk monster.
Oh yeah, because he took Dr. Jekyll's formula, but took like the steroid version of it.
Yeah.
I remember that.
It felt something out of that. So that's why it's like I don't mind schlocky things. In fact, I like schlocky things that belong in like a schlocky genre.
I think this movie, this movie, because it very much was setting itself up to be this serious, dark, Victorian era gothic horror tone, at least. Not that the movie itself was necessarily like that, but it at least was setting itself up, and it did a good job setting it up. Like the dark shots of the houses, some of the scenes like the lack of music and stuff like that. So what it did right in this movie, it did very well, and it executed right. But what it kind of missed on does leave a lot to be desired. And again, I wish they went more, especially in that some of the transformation scenes. I wish they did more practical effects in the asylum because some of the CGI just didn't look well.
It was also 2010. You know, you gotta. I'm sure as a kid you probably thought it looked awesome, right?
Oh yeah.
So, the movie's almost 15 years ago.
And see, that's another thing too with even the transformation in that the dad is talking about accepting the beast, and it's like, have you seen that transformation? That looks horrible. That just looks so painful. Especially when he's in the asylum and he's transforming in front of all of them, and like his teeth are shifting in his mouth.
Yes.
The claws are growing out of his. You see his like the bones in his like
Again,
ankles,
it's a curse.
heel are shifting. Yeah. So they had that, but then it's like when the dad, and then that one line too when he's like choking his dad, and then they're both transforming simultaneously, and the dad's like, "You were heir to my kingdom, Lawrence. You've always been." It's like, that's kind of a throwaway line. Like,
oh, you just reminded me, Daniel. I absolutely hated in the beginning. Again, this comes down to the script. What did Anthony Hopkins say to Lawrence? He's like, "Welcome back, my dear boy."
Oh,
it's like my heir to the throne, or some very cliche dialogue.
Oh, he's like, lo and behold, the prodigal son returns.
He says that again when he comes back to kill him. Like, oh, this is film schooly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he says that one in the very beginning. Lo and behold, the prodigal son returns. And he says,
that's what I mean.
At the end, when he's going to go fight him.
And see, that's what I mean in the sense of like really, they didn't need to really drive the nail in. Him and his dad are distant. The way Anthony Hopkins acted was good enough. to show that the dad's distant, because even like when Gwen says your dad's very distant, and then Lawrence is explaining to her like, yeah, he's always kind of been distant, that's fine. Then you get it the way he kind of just sometimes like stares and lurks, and it's like weird because they did a good job with it. I think Anthony Hopkins did a good job of making Sir John unsettling and distant and weary.
That's what good actors do.
Yeah, but the dialogue, like you said, the script at times, so
straight out of film school.
If they had just trimmed down some things and maybe redid some things, I think this had a chance to be like a top tier werewolf movie.
Oh,
I would say in the sense of like actual overall, generally, you could say. Obviously, everyone has their personals and stuff like that, but
well, let me ask you this: setting aside what you said, everything about this movie, what do you think is the best werewolf movie? Doesn't have to be Universal.
No, it has to. I don't know.
Still thinking over there?
Yeah, I'm actually not entirely sure on that.
Really? You mean to tell me it wouldn't be Silver Bullet? Can you narrow it down to like 3? Maybe not top, but
top men. Can I say Teen Wolf?
What?
With Michael J. Fox.
Oh, Teen Wolf. Oh, yeah. Teen Wolf 2 with Jason Bateman.
Was that like one of 3 movies he didn't play himself?
I never saw it, actually.
Honestly, I don't know, actually.
Yeah?
Because I think because I think the thing too is people treat them, they can be treated differently. For example, you have this one where it's like the dad accepts it as a gift. And then there's more like the tragic approach, which is what the original one was for. I don't know. I guess it would depend on your perspective. Because I think there's that movie Dog Soldiers where it's just soldiers. It's just like soldiers trapped in a house and have to fend themselves off against these werewolves. So I don't think there's necessarily much development there with those werewolves, but I like it more like the Wolfman, where it truly is, just in the sense of it's truly like a curse.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to treat it.
Yeah, he's a tragic character, and now he has to live with it.
So well, I don't know, Daniel. Maybe the top one on your list could be the new Wolfman. Because I lied. I'm a liar. Earlier on in this episode, I said that's coming out this week. It's coming out the 17th of January, so this episode is going to be out well before that. So I'm a liar, but
a week before it. Have you seen the trailers for it?
Yes, I have. I saw the design, and I saw on the Wikipedia page that the director, Lee Winnell, was not too happy that they showed off the design so early, because I could show a picture on it for this podcast because I think it's like not copyrighted or anything. Or it's not like me taking a picture at the movie screen or something. But it looks like some kind of crack addict in Philadelphia with long hair. Because I think maybe it'd be appropriate.
Meth man?
It'd be appropriate maybe to talk about The Invisible Man, because that guy did do The Invisible Man. We could maybe do an episode on that, the new one.
Yeah.
But listen, like the design looks terrible, but maybe that's not the final design. Maybe that's stage 1 out of 2. I don't know.
Did you see what they released a year before? It was like someone in like makeup in the look. Like,
yeah, he was walking around. I'm thinking maybe that might be like the pre-stage.
Or like maybe the one that bites him or scratches him.
Yeah.
Because I think he scratches. It looks like in the trailer he gets scratched. So my take is that this is going to be like a modern take where it's not. There really isn't like any mythical or mythology to it or lore. I think it's going to be like a rabies infection. He's just going to become rabid.
Yeah, it's more like a disease.
But they're going to treat it like it's a
Dare
disease.
I say, Daniel? I think it might be some kind of supplement for like an STI or something. That's what I'm thinking. You know? Like they'll try to treat it as... You ever see that movie called It Follows?
No.
Where they treated the monster like it was some kind of STI where you could pass it on to people. I don't know. I could be totally wrong about the Wolfman, but, you know. Who knows?
I think they're gonna treat it like rabies.
Probably, yeah. It seems like it's gonna be a more realistic take, and maybe for the Wolfman something as grandeur as that doesn't really need to be realistic. He looks like some kind of like homeless guy with a white
Yeah,
beard. If that thing is chasing and there's no mythic element to it, then you could just beat it and shoot it to death. Because that's at least the thing with the Wolfman and a werewolf is that it needs to be some kind of silver weapon that can kill him. Like in the original movie, it was a silver cane that you could use, or obviously the
yeah.
silver bullet. But if that thing is running around and imagine he's like in Texas or in Florida, you just shoot him to death.
Cali, he'd probably have a good shot at becoming mayor.
But something like the Wolfman needs to have that mythical element to it. Because if you
And
play it
that and that
straight, it's just
and
gonna
that's
everyone's
and
gonna be
that's like,
wondering like you could just shoot this guy to death.
well, one, the design looks horrible. Two, it, it's because it's one thing if you were to be like, all right, the design looks horrible, but they're still going to play into the werewolf. Like they're still going to go into that lore and mythology and stuff. It's like, all right, I mean, bad choice on the design, but you're designing it how you want to design it, whatever. But yeah, the fact that they're now, it seems they're going to make it like rabies, and just from the trailer, I don't know if you saw these trailers, Colin, but it was saying that, or the specific trailer where it was like, yeah, are we gonna be okay? Like the daughter's like, are we gonna be okay? And he's like, it's my job, it's my job to protect you. I'm like, oh, they're gonna beat this over the head like
Well,
already.
you know what? There's only one way to see how the movie's gonna be, Daniel, and that is watching it. I am sickened but curious to see it, especially because how disappointed I was with Nosferatu. So I'm sure you'll probably be very disappointed with this. But
I
you know
don't
what?
have.
I'll give
I'm
it the
not going.
benefit of the doubt.
I'm going in with low expectations.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I think that's probably the
if
best
they
thing to do.
if they somehow go lower, then really, what the?
Well,
We'll see.
let's do this. Let's. How about you just give me your final thoughts on the Wolfman 2010? Yeah. What's your opening or excuse me? What's your closing statement on the Wolfman?
Best werewolf. They get the werewolf right completely. Design, the way he acts and stuff, great job. Rest of the movie can be a lot left to be desired. So I guess you could say what they get right very well. But I guess you could say the overall film could be underwhelming. Is a good way to put it.
Yeah, I think it had a lot of the good pieces to be really good, but again, this is a classic case of the script failing the movie. And again, I can kind of look past the schlocky stuff, but it bothered me a little bit. But I think it's not nearly as bad as people say it is. Like I think
I
on
think this
Rotten
movie,
Tomatoes, it has a 33%. I don't think
yeah,
it doesn't deserve that.
I would give it like a 50. I would say this movie, from an outside perspective, I think overall you could say a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, it's nowhere near offensive or bad as people make it out to be, but it's not some masterpiece or it's
Yeah.
really not even that good. It's in the middle.
Yeah. And that's why I think if you were to go see this movie, if you're just going in, like you said, if you're going in for just the werewolf, I think you're going to be satisfied. You would not walk away disappointed. If you're just going to go in like overall for the whole movie, I would say you could enjoy it. You could enjoy parts of it, but you probably might consider it disappointing or underwhelming.
Yeah,
And,
I
and I
agree.
think this movie too. That's another thing you brought up. I forgot to mention that this movie initially got ripped to shreds when it first came out, but I think it's one of those movies now, and people look back and are like, it's aged better. Or people, and I think also fans are just like the werewolf genre, and also the Wolfman enjoy the movie more than what the critics have said of it. So I think the movie is more well received with like werewolf and Wolfman fans definitely than critics, but I don't know why this movie was hated so much by the critics. Like a 30%, the 32, that's brutal. That that's like Morbius bad.
No,
Actually, no,
Morbius
Morbius
is
is worse.
like 12%.
All right, no. But I
Nothing is
think
that bad.
wasn't Madam Web Wars, or was that
Yeah,
better?
Madam Web had like a single digit score, I think.
Stat
But
that.
I think since you gave your closing statement, I think it's like I said, okay movie. It's not terrible. It's not boring, really. There's worse movies out there, and there are definitely worse werewolf movies out there. And yeah, that's really that. Anything else, Daniel?
No,
Okay, then. With all that being,
we'll wait
oh,
till the newest disappointment comes out.
yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go in without it with an open mind. But
Yeah,
with
yeah.
all that being said, though, this has been the Unbiased Opinion, where everyone's opinion is biased except ours. I'm Colin,
And I'm the Wolf Dan.
and I don't know what the episode's going to be next week, but we will see you next time.